contest show in the land. The Las Vegas Football Contest Show focuses on Circa Sports Million, Circa Survivor, and the Westgate Super Contest, handicapping the games and releasing our contest picks every week of the season. With two former Super Contest winners, Brady Cannon and James Salinas, a former NFL player, Mike Pritchard, and over $1 million in contest prize money won combined, the Las Vegas Football Contest Show will have you prepared this season like none other.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
My grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, "Oh, Matt, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you."
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek. As I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
"Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben." Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you was here on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Tony Bennett stepping down and resigning from Virginia right before the season started versus the Villanova team that, folks, I gotta take my glasses off. I can't figure this team out. I can't figure this team out for 2 damn years. And the problem that keeps coming up is the coaching of Kyle Neptune.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Good morning. Welcome to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Great to be back with you here on our Wednesday edition of the show. We're one day away from football being back on Thursday night. We had some MAC action. We're actually closing in on Thanksgiving, a lot of holidays, a lot of fun, and we're going to have some fun here on the show today as well. We, of course, have our guest contributor from Legal Sports Report, Sam McQuillan, will be with us in the house. We'll also recap the latest going on in the National Football League, college basketball, the NBA as well. So make sure you stay with us here on the grid. Michael DeCourcy covers some college hoops, has a preview of a couple of games tonight. Let's begin with a potential change to the NIL laws coming potentially around the country. Former college football head coach Tommy Tuberville, who's now involved in politics, wants to change the NIL law. This is a groundbreaking idea that may potentially involve players and student athletes who initially accept money to go play for a school. This would prevent them from leaving and simply taking more money from another school in the future. So with this name, image, and likeness taking hold of all of our college sports and sports athletes, is there a chance that free agency, which is the wild, wild west right now in college sports, becomes a one and done, meaning players sign with one team and that's who they remain with? Stay tuned. New York Jets making news yet again today. They have now decided to fire their general manager, Joe Douglas. And after firing their head coach and firing the GM, it looks like that Jets are headed to a rebuild potentially next season. As they make it official yesterday, the Jets looking like one of the worst teams in the NFL this season. Some really questionable moves as well. Douglas did have some good draft picks over the course of his tenure. But needless to say, the owner right now is coming under a lot of fire, as owners do in professional sports. There are some reports from The Athletic that the owner of the Jets wanted to bench Aaron Rodgers and had to be talked out of it, and that he fired Robert Saleh exclusively without speaking to some of the people in his organization. Needless to say, it's a full report, a lot in The Athletic if you want to read it over there. But again, just rumors at this point, no real facts. We don't know those until, of course, the owner says whether or not he did or did not do these things. All right, let's move on. College football, top 25 action and playoff action is headed our way. Not anything particular that stands out this week other than the fact that Ohio State and Indiana, as you could see there, are both playing each other this week. So that is really going to determine who has the higher seeding in the playoff if whoever wins out wins this game. In terms of what the bracket looks like moving forward for the college football playoff, remember the conference champions are getting a bye. So as you could see, if Oregon wins out, they would get one. The University of Miami would get one, and so would Boise State. So as you can see, there's still a lot to work out, but with the rankings coming out and some big games coming up this weekend, the picture is getting a little bit clearer. The run for the Cleveland Cavaliers officially ends. They're not going to go 82-0 or 81-0, whatever it was this season. Boston ends the 15-game winning streak of the Cleveland Cavaliers last night. They were favored. And by the way, the Cavs actually covered a game where they didn't win. So kudos to them. 120-117 the final. And again, the run comes to an end for Kenny Atkinson and company. Let's hear from the Boston Celtics. So let's hear from Jason Tatum, who basically said, ho-hum, another big game, another win.
I think, like you said, we've been in so many moments together, so many big games, that we don't do anything like spectacular. We just do the simple things. We do the right reads all the time, or most of the time, whether it's cup game or regular season game or, in the finals. We know where each other is supposed to be. We work on reads all the time in practice. And regardless of how the game is going or the shots are falling, it's all about making the right read, and, the game will reward that.
I think right now the Boston Celtics are looking at this like, hey, the Cleveland Cavaliers are the team to beat right now. Maybe gave them some fuel in the game last night. Kenny Atkinson didn't seem all that upset, by the way, with the loss yesterday, saying they essentially can bank this one, and they're going to play the Celtics in a couple weeks.
Hopefully. I'm not sure they'd say the same thing. I mean, they're so good, and we gave resistance in the second half. But for us, we have a lot to store in the bank. Obviously, we're going to see these guys in 2 weeks. Yeah, lot of stuff we can improve on. A lot of stuff I felt like I said before, we could have been, I could have been better prepared on both ends of the ball. So credit to them. We'll have another shot at them soon.
Let's get to the latest with the Philadelphia 76ers, off to one of the worst starts they've ever had in their NBA history. There was a report right now on ESPN saying that there's been arguments between teammates, including Tyrese Maxey and Joel Embiid, surrounding Embiid's lateness to some practices and team events. Needless to say, when you're off to a 2-11 start, the finger pointing begins. As of right now, Nick Nurse doesn't seem all that willing to discuss some of the off-the-court issues that the 76ers are having, but until they start winning some games, stories like these are not going to go away. Well, how about this one? The Boston Bruins, nice run over the last few years coming to an end. Jim Montgomery has been fired after getting off to a losing record in their first 20 games. The team made the announcement yesterday. I mean, his record, folks, imagine this in professional sports: 120 wins, 41 losses, 23 ties, and a 715 points percentage in 3 seasons with the Bruins. They made the playoffs twice, and he got fired. Seems to me that being a coach isn't a long-term proposition by any means. Meanwhile, AT&T Stadium saw a piece of metal fall through the roof, and the stadium basically is saying that they're safe and can still operate. There's a communications coordinator named Susan Schrock who said that the stadium is closing the matter and there's no further inspection needed. So who knows how that all happened, but basically they're saying much ado about nothing. Don't look here. The Bengals cornerback DJ Turner has a broken clavicle. He's placed on injured reserve. The Bengals are off to a 4-7 start this season. And as far as the Dallas Cowboys potentially making a quarterback change, doesn't look like it. Jerry Jones went on his radio show and said that Trey Lance not yet given a shot to start. He said that he thought Cooper Rush had some improvement, and looks like Cooper Rush is going to start this week, maybe probably on Thanksgiving, I would guess, as well, against the New York Giants, against Tommy DeVito. Sit down, have some turkey, enjoy that game. All right, Dalton Knecht had the game of his life last night, or maybe the first game of what's going to be a great career for him. He was awesome for the Lakers. 37 points last night, 9 3-pointers for the rookie. 124-118. They end up beating the Utah Jazz. Russell Westbrook recorded his 200th career triple-double in their win over the Grizzlies. 122-110. The Spurs won a game without Wembayama yesterday, okay? I mean, they were 8.5-point underdogs. No one saw this coming. They beat the OKC Thunder 110-104. and Luka had 26 points and 5 rebounds as the Mavs rout the Pelicans 132-91. College football action on a Tuesday night. In case you missed it, good thing you're here because I'm going to tell you all about it. Akron, the Zips get a win yesterday. They covered the 10.5 against Kent State, 38-17. Central Michigan beats Western Michigan 16-14. They were 6.5-point dogs. Miami, Ohio beats NIU 20-9. They covered the 2.5. And tonight, Buffalo is a slim 1.5-point dog at Eastern Michigan. Also, Toledo takes on Ohio. In college basketball, number 15th ranked Marquette ends up getting a win over Purdue, 76-58, the final there. Cam Jones has the first triple-double since Dwayne Wade. That was a long time ago, 2003. Number 2, UConn keeps winning. They beat Texas A&M. And how about the start that Kentucky is off to with new head coach Mark Pope? They beat Lipscomb University 97-68, the final, as the Wildcats are off to a nice start in this 2024-25 season. All right, the new AP poll is also out. And so when we come back after a quick timeout, we're going to be joined by Michael DeCourcy of Sporting News. He'll tell us exactly what's going on with Marquette. And also we'll talk about Kentucky and some of the Big Ten odds to win the championship. For those of you who do not yet have the SportsGrid app, take out your phone, open up this QR code, scan it. It's right there on your screen, available for iOS and Android, the SportsGrid app. It is brand new and exclusive to all of our users here. And the best part about it, folks, news, notes, information, picks against the spread, and absolutely free. And so is our stream. We'll take a quick time out. Michael DeCourcy will join us next. We'll break down some college hoops.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Fortunately, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Devontae Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid, Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. It's our dose of college basketball information and notes with Michael DeCourcy each and every week exclusively here on NewsWire. Let's bring him in. And Michael, thanks again for coming back on the show. Let's take an updated look at the top 25, which was recently released. And, not a ton of change. Kansas still the number one team in the country, followed by UConn. Interesting to see, I think, Auburn there at number 4. A lot of SEC teams like Alabama and Tennessee there as well. Mike, any new takeaway from the updated top 25 this week?
I think we're seeing the rise of Gonzaga, and I don't think there'll be a fall, Craig. Gonzaga has already been through several difficult games. They play in a multi-team tournament next week. I believe they're out in Maui, and that will be a big one for them. If they can come away from that with a championship, they're going to hang around the top 5 all year long. They're going to be playing for a number 1 seed. They are a deep team. They have great size inside. They have terrific skill in the backcourt with Nolan Hickman at the shooting guard spot, with Nembhard at the point guard spot. There's a lot to like about the Zags, and we'll get a chance to see them next week in a big showcase.
Yeah, we will. Now let's move on to one of the games last night, and I guess this really caught me by surprise. Not that Cam Jones is good on Marquette, but the fact that they haven't had a triple-double since Dwayne Wade at that school. I mean, that seems like a really, really long time, 2003. And then Wade goes on to have a Hall of Fame career in the NBA. They get a big win against Purdue last night. Jones, 7 for 12. The triple-double read like this: 17 points, 13 rebounds, and 10 assists. Maybe I shouldn't be all that surprised, but again, it's not like Marquette, Mike, has been awful in any way for 2 decades. Like, they were a good
they've
team.
had great players who might have
Yeah.
been able to do that. Absolutely. Tyler Kolek coming off of last year could have done it. We go back to Jarrell McNeil 15 years ago. They've had some outstanding players that might have been able to do that. But it took until last night. I'll tell you, second half, when they put up the stat that said, I think at that point that Cam had 3 points, around 9 rebounds, and 7 assists, I said, he's getting a triple-double. I knew right away he was going to do it. I knew he'd get the points, and it was, I think the last item was one more assist, and he got there. He was fantastic. He was a first-team All-American for the Sporting News in the preseason. We were one of the few to do that because he's just a magnificent player. And they're using him a lot at point guard, which something, I'll be honest with you, I did not anticipate. I didn't know that would be the natural next step for him, but it'll certainly help him with his development toward a pro career. He had some dazzling passes against the Boilers. He's an outstanding player, and he's a big reason why Marquette's going to be a threat. They have a fantastic backcourt. The front court is solid, but they aren't great at protecting the rim, and they're not super dynamic up front, but they've got as good a backcourt as just about anybody does, and led by Cam Jones.
Yeah, would agree. And it's been a great start for them, as it has been for Cooper Flagg of Duke, who is just such a big favorite to win the Wooden Award this early in the season. I mean, we've only played 2 weeks. This guy is 3-1. The popularity of Duke is there, so we know why, but Cam Jones is now up to 8-1 over on the FanDuel Sportsbook to win college basketball's best player. Inevitably, Mike, I guess I would ask you this. Is this going to be a popularity contest? Because if so, it's going to be somebody on Duke, I would assume.
It doesn't hurt to be as gifted as Cooper Flagg is. I'd watch out for Ryan Kalkbrenner, though. I've always liked Ryan from the first time I saw him as a high school player at the Peach Jam. A friend of mine pointed him out to me, and he began as a terrific shot blocker with great instinct, and he's continually developed as an offensive player. He's great at the pick and roll in terms of being a roll man, a run-to-the-rim man. He remained an outstanding defender. And you look at those odds, and if you want to remember, it's so early. He's not a bad flyer at that number. He's had magnificent games early on, not against the best competition, but he's handled himself very well in some terrific Big East battles in the past against players like Donovan Clingan. So I won't be at all surprised if he's in the mix when we get to the end of the year.
All right, now let's take a look at the Big Ten odds. Speaking of which, Purdue, a huge favorite to win over on FanDuel, plus 340, followed by Michigan, Ohio State, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan State. And wouldn't you know, we're fortunate to get Illinois on the court tonight, so we'll get a chance to see them. But last night, Michigan State took on Samford, and it didn't go as planned, to say the least. They end up winning the game. I see here that they're 10-1 to win the Big Ten. Is this a down year projected for Tom Izzo of Michigan State?
I'm not sure I'm ready to say it's a down year. There were elements of last night that went well. They finally got a high-level performance from Jaden Akins, who's an outstanding talent, but hasn't been a consistent performer yet. Part of that was hierarchy in the past. Part of it was injury in the past. This is his chance to shine. Finally, he took it last night. I think Tom Izzo's still looking for his rotation. I don't think he's found it yet. There are 7 or 8, maybe 9 good players that wear Spartan green, but I don't know yet that he's found the combinations the way he wants them to work. I still think that they have a chance to be excellent, but I don't know that I'd place any bets on them to win it all because it may take into January, February for them to find the rhythm. Although looking at those odds, I wouldn't place a bet on anybody. I think it's going to be an absolute slugfest in the Big Ten this year. With Daniel Jacobson's injury at Purdue, that's changed the dynamic of their defense. He had a chance to develop into a really good rim protector. He's a freshman. He will be out for the year. And although I still think Purdue will have an outstanding season, I think it's going to be much harder for them to defend their Big Ten title than it would have been otherwise.
All right, Mike, let's close it out with a preview of the big game tonight in college basketball, a top 25 matchup. Illinois, really good team, by the way, at Alabama, the Tide, 8.5-point favorites. What stands out to me here is that this is going to be a decent game because the total is 167.5. Who do you like in this one?
Alabama likes to get going, and so that's why the number is so high. You're talking about a veteran team against a really young team, and the really young team taking its first road trip. That's why the spread is where it is, and it's why I definitely would expect Alabama to control the game. With Mark Sears at the front of it. Alabama's really good. They had a tough Friday night at Purdue. I think they're going to want some revenge on somebody wearing Big Ten patches on their uniforms, and Illinois will serve the purpose.
All right. Thanks, Mike. Great to catch up with you. We'll see you again next week. Sound off's up next. Don't go away.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you. You pinching your own cheek? As I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. It's time now to hear from Coach Prime on the big game this week against Kansas and get a preview of it with Joe Lisi. It is now time for the SportsGrid Sound Off. All right, this is really an interesting case of two worlds colliding here. The Colorado Buffaloes world's been all about winning. I mean, this has been one of the hottest teams in college football. seemingly haven't lost in like 2 months. Now, on the flip side, you have a team in Kansas that has probably different aspirations this season, but they just pulled off a big win and an upset win against BYU last week. So let's get a big preview of the game coming up this Saturday with our very own Joe Lisi.
Huge battle taking place in Lawrence this coming Saturday with Big 12 implications and, more importantly, potential college football playoff odds on the line. Colorado's hitting on all cylinders, entering this matchup 8-2 overall. They've won 4 straight by an average margin of victory of 19.2 points per game. Travis Hunter, the front runner right now for the Heisman Trophy, minus 400. Shedeur Sanders and that offense are hitting on all cylinders, fresh off a 25-point win this past weekend over Utah. Kansas, on the other hand, 4-6 overall, back-to-back wins against BYU and Iowa State. They need to win out 2 games just to become bowl eligible. We'll see how this game plays out. Devin Neal and, more importantly, Jalen Daniels spearhead this rushing attack for Kansas, but Colorado's defense is peaking at just the right time. I'll lay the 2 points with Colorado on the road. Now, Craig, back to you.
All right, thanks, Joe. We'll get an update on all the college football games coming up this Saturday, so make sure you stay tuned live here on SportsGrid on Saturday morning. Meanwhile, Kansas knows what's at stake, and certainly there's a tremendous amount of respect for both coaches in this game. Let's start with the Jayhawks head coach, Lance Leopold, who talked about playing against Colorado this week, playing against Coach Prime, and simply what Coach Prime has done for that program.
I have a lot of respect for Coach Sanders and Coach Prime and how he's gone about it. And I told him that one of the first times I met him, because the thing that we do have in common is we've come up through ranks that aren't necessarily conventional to get a Power 4 football job. And that is, he coached high school football. He coached at a HBCU university that doesn't have many resources, and he found a way to be successful. And he found a way to build his program and his own philosophy. And I told him that when I met him in Arizona, how much respect I had for him because of that. And you know, in whether it be our styles or personalities, he is probably was ahead of the curve in probably being upfront about what the landscape of college football was changing and what it was going to be like and where it's heading. And that's not his fault. He's taken what's been put on us and he's gone about building a football team that's one of the most improved in college football in a very short period of time. They're a very talented team. They're playing with a lot of confidence. Again, in all 3 phases, they've been highly productive, and he's got himself a really good football team with a chance to play a lot of football yet.
There's also a chance that the University of Colorado has a Heisman Trophy Award winner on their team, maybe even 2 in Shedeur Sanders. But the player who is likely going to win the Heisman Trophy, of course, is Travis Hunter, currently on the FanDuel Sportsbook, minus 400 to take home the trophy. But a reporter at a press conference this week asked Coach Prime specifically, with knocking Hunter on the amount of tackles that he makes each and every game against the opposing offensive player. And basically, Coach Prime goes into the reason why he doesn't make a lot of tackles is because he doesn't have to.
The latest thing that people have used to try to tear down Travis's Heisman campaign is his tackle numbers.
Oh, my
God. I was curious if you could explain for those who don't know.
How can you make tackles? First of all, if a cornerback has 8 tackles in the game, do you guys know what that means? Anybody? That means they caught 6 balls. That's what that means. They caught 6 balls on him because 2 of those are probably run support. But that means he caught 6 balls. So if you see a corner with a lot of tackles, that's not a good sign. Okay? So just those of you out there in the world of football, if you see a corner with a lot of tackles, they've caught a lot of balls on him. All right? Is that good enough for you? There you go.
It does make some sense. We'll see if that changes at all. I mean, the Heisman Trophy Award, usually this stage of the game has a favorite, but fair to say anyone that's minus 400 on any kind of award, college or pro, at this stage of any season seems like they're going to end up winning that award. All right, coming up next, Sam McQuillan will join us from Legal Sports Report. Stay on the grid. We'll be right back.
here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Totally, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when she goes here on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. Check out LegalSportsReport.com for the very latest on sports betting across the country. A lot of legislation still at stake here as we close out the year 2024. Let's bring in Sam McQuillan here on the show. And Sam, great to have you back. I mean, what do you know? It's already been a year since this big transition from Penn Gaming, DraftKings, everything else to move over to ESPN Bet. It's been 1 year since this has happened. And I know that you had a chance to dive a little bit deeper into what we've seen over the past year. I know it was a slow start for ESPN Bet. Do you personally feel like anything has picked up in terms of momentum for them?
Yeah, it's an interesting question, Craig. And it was a very unique year for ESPN Bet, Penn Entertainment moving on from Barstool. In some sense, things have picked up for them in terms of reaching their long-term vision, which was talked about at the conference this week. Where ESPN always every year talks about their new, technology advancements, new things going in the background they're excited about. And in a lot of other senses, things have really slowed down in terms of the actual numbers you look at every month. The things investors really care about this year, sports betting wasn't really a big talk at the conference, although Disney chair Bob Iger and ESPN chair Jimmy Pitaro did talk about kind of where it fits in terms of their new upcoming direct-to-consumer subscription service, which has been long rumored. It's nicknamed Flagship. It's essentially this all-in-one personalized experience where you watch SportsCenter. You're going to see the things you want to see as a fan on SportsCenter, the things you want to see as a fantasy player. You log into the ESPN app, you see these things that are personalized to you. They did mention where sports betting kind of fits in that vision. And I think that gets to the point of reaching kind of their long-term goals of having this all-in-one, seamlessly integrated experience. I did catch up with Mike Morrison, who is the vice president of ESPN Betting and Fantasy, and he talked more kind of on the side about this all-in-one sort of super app where you go into the ESPN Bet app. It's going to be linked with all of the ESPN articles you read, with all of the streaming games that you want to see, kind of all in one place, this big all-in-one ecosystem, which Penn was really excited about when they moved on from Barstool and took on ESPN. It wasn't essentially just trading one partner, one marketing brand for another. It was really being able to unlock all of ESPN's kind of core assets. But to get back to your question, we've seen Penn's market share really slip ever since they launched ESPN Bet in 17 states. Last November, they had pretty big gains originally. A lot of that came from people downloading the app to get the free sign-up offers and free sign-up bonuses. We've really seen that slip in recent months, recent weeks, especially into football season. Our Eric Ramsey does a great job breaking down all the data. And you see they're kind of only at 2% market share right now, which is a big far cry from their long-term goal of 20%. But again, these people at ESPN have reiterated some of the things that they've done recently, like connecting the brands, having this account linking between ESPN and ESPN Bet will eventually unlock this vision where everything's all seamlessly integrated together. Now, it's still a far way away from that. We're seeing sort of incremental steps to get there. And you have to wonder, as Penn is facing a lot of pressures as a company from their investors as well, if we're going to get to that, have they bought themselves kind of enough time while the immediate stuff kind of slips as well? So more of this long-term kind of big vision trying to play out. But essentially right now, you've seen them kind of, not match up with what the other apps are trying to do.
No, and still a lot of time to get it done, of course. This is their first year in, and you just don't know what kind of success or failure they're going to have. Meanwhile, a lot of people are failing in Georgia trying to play sports bets, not realizing, I guess, that sports betting, Sam, is not legal in Georgia. Now, they can find their way to do this, I'm sure, which is probably a story for another day, but there's some data coming in that shows a lot of people want to bet on sports in Georgia, and they just don't understand how.
Yeah, data's coming in. It comes in every week, every Sunday from this company called GeoComply, which essentially tracks all of the app logins people do in legal states and in non-legal states. And they saw that there was 42,000 login attempts into legal sports betting apps in Georgia this past Sunday, which was up 105% from the same weekend last year. Not much has changed since then. Sports betting is still illegal. There was 7,800 accounts associated with Georgia residents that tried to log in, which was also more than double than last year, kind of demonstrating how the demand for sports betting in big non-legal states like Georgia is growing, while legislatively there doesn't seem to be much progress being made. My colleague Pat Evans, who does a tremendous job covering the sort of legal workings and political background that goes into all of this stuff, reported, that the recent efforts have been pretty much tied up by these political issues in Georgia, where you have to have everyone kind of on the same page, a bipartisan agreement, but Georgia is very divided politically. And there's even disagreements about how you would legalize it, how the law needs to be written. Some folks think you need a constitutional amendment. Others in the industry have argued you don't need one, which would make it easier to pass. But there was one proposed last year, which had bipartisan support, so you got over that hurdle, but then it kind of fell apart as people disagreed, how we legally can make these changes. So Georgia's another one of these big states where you've seen the demand rise, but lawmakers kind of leaving this potential tax revenue on the table. And to your point, people are going to, offshores, to fantasy sports apps, which offer similar services. So we'll see if any of this data is presented next year. I'm sure it will be, that says, hey, the demand is growing. We'll see if that makes a big difference. It hasn't so far in Georgia, at least.
Yeah. No, I mean, this is a great way to sort of compile data and show that people are interested in, but until they actually get it on the ballot, it just kind of feels like people are going to keep trying to do this and not have success. All right. Now on my social media feed, I am seeing a ton of BetMGM ads and some push to get me and other people online to bet on sports via their app. I know that you had a chance to speak to the CEO of BetMGM, and how is social media advertising compelling in terms of what they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, this is a really pivotal NFL season for a lot of sports betting apps, and especially for BetMGM, which has essentially, done a pretty good job as it, compare it to the rest of the market, but hasn't been able to get into that space that DraftKings and FanDuel occupy, where they have about 75% of the market. So yeah, I caught up with the CEO, Adam Greenblatt, who talked about those partnerships with X and with the Associated Press, where they're really trying to be more kind of in the front and center of where these sports betting conversations are happening this NFL season, while leaning on a lot of technology advancements that they've been able to make. So Last year, it was kind of everyone wanted to show profitability. Now they're kind of trying to show how do we be more efficient and how do we get to users and how do we capture users in another spot. So the product seems to be in the best shape it's been yet. You know, you have the enhanced same game parlays. You have, major upgrades in terms of player markets, in terms of live betting capabilities, and using those partnerships with X and the Associated Press. They're essentially trying to take these product enhancements and bring them to the front of the light, as opposed to having Jamie Foxx talk about sign-up offers on NFL commercials and everything like that. So it's been interesting to see and hear him talk about his vision and what he's learned has kind of changed as everything has developed. So they're really focused on, growing the place that they're at now, as opposed to this big shotgun approach they had very early on, and trying to get BetMGM to differentiate itself and get a foothold right there with the top operators. So it's been good so far, he says. We'll have to see how the rest of the season plays out.
Yes, it's still some time. And again, the NFL playoffs, college football playoffs are coming. There's going to be a ton of people still ready to dive into sports betting. Sam, great to catch up with you. And again, we'll read you over at LegalSportsReport.com. Thanks for coming on the show.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Craig.
All right, coming up next, we're going to be joined by Simon Applebaum, who has so much information to give us. We probably could do a whole show, an hour, on sports television and streaming rights. So stay on the grid for that. In addition, don't forget, coming up immediately after the show is the early line, followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast at 3 o'clock Eastern. We'll take a quick timeout on NewsWire. We'll be right back with Simon after this.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Told me I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The early line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire. Simon Applebaum is with us from the podcast Tomorrow Will Be Televised. He's going to tell us where the NBA's best show, pre and post, is going to be televised next season. For that and a whole lot more, let's bring in Simon. Simon, a lot of news here as we start off the show today. Looks like Comcast is in the news, NBC, Universal, and then, of course, as we'll get to, inside the NBA as well. Thanks for coming on the show.
It's great to be here, Craig. And I'll tell you, amid all that news you're talking about, one very happy party is CBS because they found out yesterday that the Chiefs-Bills game on Sunday, which had 31 million viewers, was their most watched late doubleheader game since 2007. And get this, the entire doubleheader day on CBS was their most watched since 1992. That's near the end of the original era of CBS covering the NFL. At that time, it was the National Football Conference games at that time. So a lot of big stuff for CBS. They're very happy about what the Chiefs and the Bills did on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I was watching the game too, so I was one of those millions and millions of people that was watching that. I am still, somebody who does watch television, regular television. Not a lot of people do. I know that Comcast is in the news here, Simon. And, cord cutters, this has been a very big topic over the last several years. I know that there was an announcement by them and NBC Universal. I don't want to bury the lead here, so I'll let you take it. What happened here?
Well, what happened is something that Mike Cavanaugh, the head of Comcast, that's the parent of NBCU, alluded to just 2 weeks ago, which is we're exploring the idea of spinning off most of our cable networks into a separate company. Well, this morning, they finally made it official they are going to do it. Within the next year, they're going to spin off the majority of their cable networks, including Golf Channel, including USA Network. The only one that will not is Bravo. It will go into a separate country now being called SpinCo. Mark Lazarus, one of the former key people at NBC Sports, he is going to lead that venture. And what's going to be interesting in the short term is going to see how the relationship with Golf Channel and NBC Sports and USA with NBC Sports evolves or devolves. Remember that USA Network has a big weekend sports schedule, including the Premier League games, Atlantic 10 basketball, which is also carried on Peacock, and so forth. And in the case of Golf Channel, most of their coverage is from NBC Sports, PGA, LPGA, Champions Tour, and so forth. So over the next year, as they make this, both USA and Golf Channel make this transition to a separate company, they're going to have to figure out what kind of relationship they're going to have with NBC Sports, what kind of deal NBC is going to have to make. And by the way, Telemundo, Universo, their Spanish language networks will stay with NBC along with Peacock. Now, in the long term, there's a very interesting situation for other networks. If you're Paramount, if you're Warner Bros. Discovery, if you are Disney, if you're A&E Networks, and your cable networks are going down, down, down in terms of viewership and ad revenue because of the cord cutting, what are you going to do? Are you going to take a page for NBC Universal and Comcast and form your own bundle of cable services, spin them off that way? For example, with Paramount, you got CBS Sports Network, you got Golazo, the old soccer channel, involved too. With Disney, you have Freeform, maybe an ESPN network like ESPN News or ESPN2. You also have, if you're A&E Network, A&E History and so forth. Or are you going to think maybe I'll jump in with Comcast and NBC Universal and bring my networks over to their party? In fact, when the press release was announced, they sort of hinted that, yeah, we may, along the way, bring in some other networks that we'll acquire, other cable networks or maybe networks from other sources. So that's the long-term, big-term story in terms of the other cable network providers like A&E and Paramount and Warner Bros. Discovery.
Okay, fascinating stuff. All right, now let's move on to what I think is probably a surprise for most people, considering we heard retirement for Charles Barkley. I'll only work for TNT. I mean, they went in circles. So many different things were said. And in the end, Simon, not only is Inside the NBA going to continue on TNT, this is going to be also distributed on ESPN. What is going on here?
Well, what's going on is that actually Inside the NBA is going to move to ESPN. TNT will continue to produce it. They will continue to have Ernie Johnson as the host. Charles Barkley is signed. Kane Smith is signed. Shaq, by the way, we don't know yet because he still has a year to go on his current contract, and he'd like to stay with it from what we understand. Well, what's going to happen is that Inside the NBA is going to become an ESPN attraction on specific situations with the NBA. Opening day, Christmas Day, maybe the in-season tournament, the final week of the regular season, as well as the playoffs and the NBA Finals. And by the way, Inside the NBA will also run on ABC when they do their Saturday night NBA broadcasts, let's say from January into March or April. So there'll be lots of Inside the NBA. TNT still is in charge. ESPN is going to take the show as is. And they're not going to, by the way, from what we understand, bring Stephen A. Smith or Malika Andrews or anybody else from their gang into it. We understand from Jimmy Pitaro that he wants Inside the NBA as it is. And he's not going to try to tinker with the format or tinker with bringing any of ESPN's personalities into the mix.
Okay. And, we'll see how that ends up working out for both sides. Now, Here's how the Netflix fight worked out. Big financial win for Netflix, big financial win for Mike Tyson and Jake Paul. But Simon, for a lot of people, it was a big L. A lot of buffering and streaming issues. So yes, everybody got the bag, so to speak. But what was the ramifications, and what will Netflix do in the future with big events like the NFL coming on Christmas Day?
Mm-hmm. Well, as Chris Berman would say, when it came to the technical transmission of that fight card, it was rumbling, bumbling, stumbling. And in fact, one Netflix user has already filed a class action lawsuit against Netflix because of all that. Nevertheless, Netflix is saying it's a big success. 108 million people worldwide saw the fight. The Mike Tyson-Paul fight, the women's undercard, about 60, 70 million people saw that. So that was the biggest women's fight card presented on television history. But certainly Netflix is on notice. They have to get their technical act together. Now, CBS Sports is going to produce the NFL coverage, so that's going to help. But when it comes to transmission, when it comes to this for not just the NFL Christmas Day games, but don't forget Monday Night Raw in early January moves over to Netflix. They will have to get their technical act together. And a lot of people, not just Netflix fans, but the sports TV critics, they're going to be watching very closely how this all turns out.
Yeah, that we will. And, certainly we talked earlier in the show, real quick, Simon, some massive numbers for NFL viewership. We'll see what Thanksgiving looks like next week, won't we?
We certainly will. And don't forget, coming up this Saturday, Ohio State, Indiana, Fox News Sunday. That might be their biggest game yet in terms of viewership.
All right, Simon, great to see you again. We'll talk again soon.
You got it, Craig. Take care. Enjoy.
All right. Simon Applebaum, the podcast tomorrow will be televised. We'll take a quick time out here on the show. Coaching rumors around college football. We'll hit on that next.
Right here with you on Pro Football Today on SportsGrid. Odds in motion, trying to see what lines have moved throughout the week.
Never felt more comfortable in this set than I do for this year. I am ready. I'm just getting angry. The hot takes are going to be here all long, people.
What in the world is going on in Miami, Dom?
It's not particularly anything to shy away from just because many people are on top of it.
Hot take, hot take.
I think this line is asking you once again to take New Orleans.
Pro Football Today, only on SportsGrid.
We live in a society right now where everybody's a snowflake, everybody's a cupcake, and everybody thinks that nothing is fair. Everything is like, it's not fair. We should have a better chance. We need more. You know what? I'm old enough to remember when you needed to have a perfect goddamn record to win a college football championship. That's the way it was. 11-1, too bad.
Sports Rage tonight, only on SportsGrid.
Grandma Bear, who owns the football team, probably comes in, gives a little, oh, man, you're such a good little boy out there. Congratulations, the way you coach this football team. I'm never going to fire you.
Fortunately, I missed you pinching your own cheek as I was looking down and did not know we were getting.
Oh, Donnie, you got such a good show there with that guy named Ben. Like, that's what your grandma would do to you when you go see her on Thanksgiving or Christmas,
The Early Line, only on SportsGrid.
Together, both Davante Adams and Garrett Wilson had huge nights. Aaron Rodgers loves the two big targets, and he says if this is going to happen, going to be very tough on the defense to decide who they want to go after.
Adams and this kid Wilson, I won't deny what they can do, but nobody else does jack.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to NewsWire here on SportsGrid. We're going to get into what the Simpsons will look like when they merge with the NFL. I don't know if you're familiar with this, but this is happening. And also, we say hello and goodbye to an NBA mascot and some coaching rumors in college football as well. Time now for some last licks. All right, this is a story that, sort of percolated this morning, but it feels like there's a chance that this one doesn't end up happening, but we'll bring it to you nonetheless. So ESPN reported this morning that FAU, Florida Atlantic University, who had Tom Herman as their head coach but recently dismissed him, could potentially look at their next head coach at Hall of Famer Ray Lewis, linebacker, a long time, of course, for the Baltimore Ravens. So this story came out, kind of interesting because, clearly Deion Sanders had a lot of success coaching. Ray Lewis, with a lot of South Florida ties, played at the University of Miami as well. But there are a lot of reports out of Boca Raton, which is where FAU is, stating that this is not true and that Lewis is not indeed going to coach Florida Atlantic University. So, sometimes when these stories happen, people take sides and they wonder, is it real? Is it not real? We really have no idea at this point. The idea of Ray Lewis coaching a football team, certainly interesting, but a lot different than I think that people are trying to correlate this to, because Deion Sanders did coach college football as a head coach previous to taking the Colorado job, and also high school football as well. So not sure that this is a real fit, but Ray Lewis is certainly a big name, arguably one of the best linebackers in the history of the NFL and even college football. We'll see which direction Florida Atlantic ends up going. All right, the Monday Night Football game that is coming, the Simpsons Fun Day football game. This is coming very soon, and, I think it's going to be a fun game here, but they're not going to flex out this game, this Cowboys-Bengals game, because of the fact that they have some flexing issues that week. They're getting ready to launch this, and what's funny here is that it's going to be the Bengals and Cowboys, and the advertisement is for Dak Prescott. I don't know if you could see that there. Dak Prescott's not playing anymore this season for the Dallas Cowboys. For those of you who are big Simpsons fans, though, get ready. It's Simpsons Football World coming to Fox. And this is coming up in the second week in December. So looking forward to this Fun Day football event. The NFL is still trying to do new things. They've done it with Nickelodeon. They've slimed players. Now they have a Simpsons Football World. And finally, folks, how about this one? The Sacramento Kings introduced a new mascot named Roy Al. And the reason why, it was because for Royals, which is what the Sacramento Kings used to be, a long time ago, 30, 40, 50 years ago. The Royals inspired City Edition jerseys. And so, unfortunately, De'Aaron Fox, who plays for the Sacramento Kings, saw this mascot when they debuted the jerseys. And it looks like they're all big fans of the jerseys, but they were not big fans of the mascot. De'Aaron Fox said he didn't know what that thing was. The clip went viral. And unfortunately, this is the first and last time that you're going to see this mascot, because they have decided to pull the plug. And they actually did a really good job in a funny way, basically showing them in and then showing them the door. So the Kings will still wear these throwback, whatever they all call City Edition jerseys, but you will not see that guy with a basketball head wearing a weird crown. He is gone. And so are we. That'll do it for the show today. Thanks again to Simon Applebaum for coming on the program. And of course, thanks to Michael DeCourcy from Sporting News and Sam McQuillan from Legal Sports Report. I would encourage you to stay tuned, because coming up next, we've got the early line, and that is followed by Pharrell Coast to Coast. So make sure you tune in to Scotty there. And Game Time Decisions at 6. In-Game Live is coming up at 6 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you stick around for that. 8 to 10 is In-Game Live Game Day. And then tonight, Gabe's on fire. It is Sports Rage, so stay on the grid for that as well. Also, thanks to our director, Luke, and our producer, Frank, I'm Craig Mish. I'll be back with you with a preview of Thursday Night Football. Should be a fun game tomorrow night between the Steelers and Browns. And then we will close out the week on Friday with Bill Bender from Sporting News. For those of you in the thick of the fantasy football playoff hunt, like me, stay tuned Saturday morning. Me and George Kurtz from 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. Eastern have a full edition of Fantasy Sports Today. And then Sunday morning, Joe Pisapia and Matt Stryker, they take you right up until Pro Football Today as well. So make sure you stay on the grid for that. So the next time you and I will see each other will be tomorrow morning at 11 a.m. Eastern for our next edition of NewsWire. And also, don't forget, you can also download the SportsGrid app. It's available for iOS and Android as well. There it is. Just take out your phone, scan the QR code. You're all set. Get some picks against the spread. Hopefully win a few. But the key is always with that, if you lose, do not blame me, because I don't do that here on the show. See you tomorrow.